Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. This is Dawn Goldstein from Freely Reading, and today I am presenting to you episode 2, Why Does Literacy Matter? Last week in episode 1, we covered the terrain of the desire or lack thereof to read, and how do you identify if you have a low desire to read, and what can you do to correct it? Today, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of statistics and just give you some hard facts about literacy and then talk about why it's so important. As a society, we need to address this problem. And today, I hope you know by the end a little bit more about where we stand as a nation and where we're headed if the people at the front are leading correctly. So if you would like to join this presentation asynchronously at any time, you can go to joinpd.com, join, Join, P for pair, D for deck.com, and then put in the asynchronous code NLZ spacebar BUM. If you don't put the space, it won't work. And so there's also a different code for live sessions. And what I hope to show is that the future of education is open. And when I mean open, I mean free. I mean the best teachers of the content should be at the forefront, guiding and presenting and facilitating. And then in the classrooms, that's where we do the intensive intervention. So I'm a specialist in correcting reading difficulties in adults. And if I can fix them in adults, yes, that means that I can teach children how to read. My background is not K through 5. My background is high school and above. However, I have had 3 children go through K through 5. And we're now all in 9th or above. And the way that I deliver instruction is based on my background of being a degree in psychology, a degree in exceptional student education, a master's degree in reading education, a suicide crisis counselor, having been through a traumatic event in, about 9.5 years ago. I know what it feels like to have trauma. And I think post-COVID, every student is going to have some kind of trauma. I noticed that even those students who excelled still missed the community and the connection of campus. Are you following? So with me, what you can understand is it doesn't matter. It's July 2021. But I have lessons that I recorded 5-6 years ago that I can give a code to, and then students can go in and complete the slideshow and the work that I give in the slideshow. And I can tell at the end if they understood the skill or the concept that I was teaching. I have this formative assessment tool called Pear Deck that's a Google add-on, and it's free. So if I were teaching online, which I've been online for 17 years, and I have no intention of going back in the classroom except at the professor level. So if I were in the classroom in a high school or an elementary school, anywhere in the world, I would learn how to use Google, and I would learn how to use Google Suite because, sorry, Microsoft, but it's a seamless way of delivering content to students, and it's just all in one. So I will show you I have what's happening with Microsoft is they're catching up. So now they have Teams and, they'll catch up. But in the meantime, everything I do is a Google something. And the code to get in, if you went to joinpd.com, is this lovely acronym. So every time there's a code, it stands for a crazy name. The kids think it's funny. It's NLZDUM, and that stands for New Lemons Zestfully Drive Underwhelmed Muffins. Don't ask. This is what Pear Deck does. So if I had a live class right now, I could take you through and have you interact with this slideshow. If you're watching this on any visual tool, any social media, YouTube, etc., I am a visual presenter, meaning my slides are where I teach, and my slides are research-based, evidence-based, technology-driven content. So it's easy on the eye, it's interactive, it's connecting. And the first thing that I like to introduce the concept to all students at all levels, no matter where I'm teaching, is expect humans to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, our feedback and how we correct them is so, so important. So I have the acronym that I use with my beginning teachers in the undergrad classes. I say ERIC them. When you make a mistake, ERIC them. ERIC. And it stands for expected, respected, inspected, and corrected. We expect mistakes in the classroom. If you're not making mistakes, that means you're not really trying. I respect students who make mistakes because it means they're trying, right? And in any learning environment, the whole goal of learning is that we take a look at what we did wrong, we inspect it, and then a good educator will give concrete, specific, measurable, attainable, deadline-driven feedback, right? That's corrective. So as an English teacher, a high school English teacher for 25 years, that is usually the red pen class, right? How many of you can think of a teacher? I bet you can think of their name, you can see what they're wearing, like use all your visual imagery skills right now and think of the teacher that shamed you in the classroom for making a mistake. And the paper that you worked so hard on that didn't come back with any positive feedback, it was all the red pen mistakes. And I always tell students that I'm the teacher and my goal is to motivate you to want to do better. And if I'm only telling you what you did wrong, where's the motivation in that? So long before rubrics were even required in the state of Florida, I had rubrics because of my special education training. And in the rubric was getting them to understand that learning is a very long and lengthy process. It takes passion, it takes perseverance, it takes problem solving, and especially today's younger generation, millennials and down, I think they assume that things come easier than they do. Like as a 50-year-old woman who has been working since like a real job at 18, but jobs I made up since I was 10. I know how much struggle and practice and effort and failure goes in to where I stand right now in my life. And what I say to my college students and my peers in the high school that I work at, that if you could understand this concept, then you would create better lessons. And those lessons would therefore service and give care to the kids the way they deserve it. And so this quote is what works best for the struggling learner works best for all learners. Like just absorb that for a minute. I learned that in college at the University of Miami. Go Canes. And I learned it from a woman who didn't have sight. Her name was Florence, and I was a exceptional student education / psychology major. Minor in Spanish and social science because I couldn't make up my mind. I met Florence because she needed help taking notes in class, and I took notes for her, and 2 years later, she took a lot of classes with me because she liked the way I took notes. And one of the things that I noticed the professors did a lot was they used non-specific language. They would say this axis or that axis or those charts there. And I would label it for her. And that was my job, and the university paid me to do that job. So I was like, I get paid to take notes in a class that I'm already taking. Is that right? And they were like, yes, she's asked for you. And so that was my introduction to what could those professors, and this is the early 90s, like what could they put in their vernacular that they could be more specific, right? And what tools, because Florence could see shadows and huge words. Like, of course, some of it was like just memory because she knew she could memorize what that sign, shape, color, configuration looked like. And we experienced, Hurricane Andrew hit when I was a student there. I was a senior. I think I was a senior. I don't know. Don't ask me questions about the date. But we lost like the most gorgeous campus. First of all, it's in Coral Gables, Florida, and it's a tiny little school. That's what people don't realize. University of Miami is this tiny little school compared to UF and UM. So you get these, and I work at a private university right now. And the thing with a private university is you get smaller classes, and they just want to help you be a better person. So they took such good care of me when I was a student there. I got free health care. Every advantage that I could take when I was there, I did. And I realized early on that the ways that somebody who isn't your typical and what is typical brain anymore, the ways in which those people learn matter. Because if we don't adapt to their learning styles per se, even though I don't think there's such a thing. I think we have strengths, but I don't know if it's a style or not. There's a cost to not understanding the world around you. There's a cost to not having clarity in your world. And the cost is usually illiteracy. So what do you think the cost of illiteracy is? Well, if you want to understand the world around you, you have to be able to think and read and write and speak and listen. And even your ability, there's an ability to comprehend in all of those areas, right? So if I diagnose a client and I'm trying to find where their reading delay is, the first thing I check is their comprehension. Silent comprehension, meaning they read to themselves and then answer some questions. Oral comprehension, meaning they have to read a different passage out loud, and then I test their comprehension. And then when I read to them, which is listening comprehension. And maybe you didn't know, but everyone has an area of strength and weakness in those three types of comprehension. They are completely different. And I'm the type of specialist that I not only diagnose where your strengths are with that, but with your vocabulary and your fluency. Just everything relies on your ability to recall words. So comprehension relies on you making mind movies. When I was a kid, I had this Viewmaster, this 3D Viewmaster. If you're looking at the slideshow, you see it. And it just was like binoculars that you brought to your eyes. You know, it expanded the view of what was on this little circular disc that had like a scene from a story. And the stories, if you start them in order, do exactly the same thing that a good story structure does, right? It starts with setting and character development, and then plot starts development. We've got conflict, we've got resolution, right? And in that one little world, you were telling yourself the story. Oh, I remember when that happened, and oh, this might happen next, right? There are all kinds of delicious things that happen when you read, and the idea that you have to take the printed word and make that movie in your mind really helps students in my classes get that, okay, well, if something isn't making sense, it's because there's some word I don't know what it means, and so the meaning of everything changed, and that's when students slip away. And it happens historically in the 4th grade. I asked you last week when we talked about the desire to read and the Matthew effect, where you were in the world. And that's always the first day 1 activity in my class. If you're following using Pear Deck, you can drag your icon right now. It's gray. Grab your geotag and put it on the continent you are from. And I do this for several reasons, and it's because I think education in the future is going to be open and access will be for all, and it will be free, right? It already is, for the record. Like, amazing universities are giving away content for free. All you have to do is give them your email. Like, I take courses that I would never have taken before if these universities weren't offering them for free. I get to expand my brain, right? So, where in the world are you from? Interacting with the slideshow. It's one of the things I do because it in the psychology and education world, we call it agency. So the way I kind of the best way I can describe agency to you is, have you ever walked into a restaurant that on the outside you chose it, right? But the second you walked in, it had like a smell to it that you knew you could not sit there and eat a meal. Okay, this has happened to me. That's your agency kicking in. And your agency says, can I tolerate this? And for how long can I tolerate this? And is this for me? And it's also, I kind of equate it with like a vibe, right? This place doesn't vibe with me. It's an energy, really. So I ask the question first minute of every class, and it usually doesn't take this long, but I'm just kind of trying to get you in my space. How are you really? And I add the word really. And then I say, this slide, you can drag your blue dot to either not in a good space. It's like the emoji with his eyebrows are furrowed and he's scratching his head and he looks worried. In the middle is like, you're kind of meh, you're bored maybe, you're not in a good space, you're not in a bad space. And then there's the life is good heart emoji. So how are you really? Drag your blue dot. And if you're not participating in the slideshow, you can put it in the comments of wherever you're seeing this. I always reply. So the reason I ask this question, I say so much, I'm trying to stop, I'm sorry. Note to self, no more so, Dawn. I'll just pause instead, right? All right. The reason I ask this question is, and during COVID, I asked it every single class, and I allowed this slide to transition to one where they could actually write why they were not in a good space, because I saw one week where one of my high achievers, usually very present, usually very talkative, wasn't there. And she kept putting not in a good space, not in a good space. And then finally by Friday, I changed the slide and I said, I added the word why. How are you really why? And then she messaged me in like our group me chat and she's like, how do you do that? And I was like, because it wasn't enough information. And I can share this slide. So let's say I have 18 to 20 students in a class normally. Some of those classes are voluntary as well, where they don't even have to be there. I just invite them at the same time. Once a week, I'll be here. This is what we're doing. And they show up. So it's usually about 18 to 20. When I show the class that they're not the only one in a not so great space, you can like almost see them smile, like a collective sigh of relief. Right? And how does it get any better than that? So here's the bad news. Here we go. I'm going to give you some numbers. And on the slideshows, there's a light bulb. And of course, all the parts of the light bulb are not going to work unless if one part's broken, right? The whole thing's broken, especially the center, the filament. I think that's what it's called. So these are reading statistics, just the United States. I figured I'd just stick to this country that I'm in. 93 million adults read at or below the basic level needed to contribute to society. What is the basic level? It's a 4th grade level. What is a 4th grade level? That's another slideshow. That's another episode. 43% of adults are functionally illiterate. Well, what is functionally illiterate? Functionally illiterate means you get a healthcare crisis and you can't get online and even scare yourself reading WebMD. What I teach people like that is, and it's built into the slideshow, so you don't get the slideshow unless you're in my member groups. But I have Immersive Reader built into all my slides. So if you can't read a word, you can just click on it and the Immersive Reader will read the page for you. So that's what I do with somebody who enters my world and is functionally illiterate. Is I teach them immediately how to utilize the tools available online for free, right? And the functionality of the slideshow, it goes beyond just what you see on the screen because there's a whole back end of data that I can then take and say, you know what? This student needs an intervention. And then I can pull, this one needs an intervention and that one needs an intervention. And then I can pull that group the next time I meet with the class, or I can just do my own, session with them. So that's what functionally illiterate is you can't read enough to help yourself in a crisis situation. 34%, I'm going to switch to kids now, children. 34% of children entering kindergarten lack the basic skills needed to learn how to read. Basic skills. How to hold a pencil, how to write their name, identify colors, shapes. Those are things, by the way, that they do in kindergarten these days. And school is not what it was when you were in school. Across the board, K through 12. 65% of 4th graders read below grade level. So something happens with content and reading content. As you get older, the vocabulary becomes more sophisticated. And if you are weak at decoding, meaning like trying to sound out multisyllabic words, you are not going to be a fluent reader. You're going to be a choppy reader or somebody who can read all the words on the page, but then don't understand any of them. That's what happens at the 4th grade is some kids can decode, but they stop understanding because the words are too hard. So if you call on them to read, they might sound like a reader, but then I've had so many kids come up to me over the years and say, you sound like somebody who can really help me, because when you call on me, I can read the words, but I don't know what I'm reading. And I was like, I know. That's why I ask you questions you can answer. And he goes, oh, thanks, miss. So that took me years to master. I asked a kid a question he couldn't answer my first year of teaching. I think it was actually my second year, because I'm like 24, 25 years old. I asked him a question and he said, man, F you. And I worked with like at-risk kids, so this wasn't like shocking to hear. And I think I could do a whole comedy show routine on what did you say when high school teenage kids say inappropriate things to me? Because I've been teaching high school since I was 23 years old. Yeah. And I'm 50. So if the fourth grade is when it gets hard for kids. And what happens is they stay working, faking it, cheating, all those things happen. But they get to high school and you can't fake it anymore. And then you realize how far behind you are. And 8,000 kids drop out a day as a result of that low reading level. So it's not, you got to remember, statistics can lie. So you might read some types of media that tell you that dropout rates have decreased. However, they haven't changed for the struggling student. They are the first to drop out. Why? Because they can't. And I came to the realization that my kids who went through, I had 11 years in a high school classroom before I went online exclusively. They always needed more of me than the one class once a year that they got me for. And that's why I created Freely Reading. Was I put out my videos on YouTube for my virtual students, and then Hurricane Wilma happened. Long story short, Louisiana picks up my videos, the public schools there, and they made one of my videos go viral, and then they kept asking for more. And I was like, I forgot I could reach kids outside my classroom, and then boom, it hit me, right? Aha! And Saul Khan was like doing his thing. He only did back then, it was just math. And I was like, well, I'm reading. Look at him and look at me. Like, I had those dreams too. Right now, I'm just trying to do what I know is best for Freely Reading, for my family, for you listening, for the community that I live in, for the society that I live in. Like, how can we increase literacy across the board? And I think it's from good teaching. And good teaching is good storytelling. That's what I teach my undergrads is, if you're going to teach a concept, tell a story. Even little kids can understand stories. When I teach a little kid to catch a ball, I don't say, honey, catch the ball, put your hands together like this. I say, sweetheart, make a nest. Okay, is it a safe nest? Do you think it's a safe nest? Like, I'll move the hands around, right? And then I say, now I'm going to throw you a birdie. You have to catch the birdie. Boom. Totally different brain. Do you understand that? So it doesn't matter how old the kid, and that's a 2-year-old thing that, the language that I just use is little kids, right? Catch the birdie, make a nest, right? You teach somebody to throw a ball, you say talk on the phone. You know what I mean? Like, there's just tell a story. And that's what Freely Reading is I'll take you, my slides tell a story. And the last statistic on the page, and I hope you heard that, 8,000 dropouts a day. Where do they go? What do they do? Do they enter the workforce? Right? What's going on? If they don't have an IEP, they have no transitional plan whatsoever. We just graduate you, right? If you have an IEP, you're blessed because you have vocational rehab on your side to make sure that you have some transitional plan after high school. Of the students that graduate every year from American high schools, 37% or are at or above reading proficiency. 37%. That's it. So even our high achievers, we don't have a lot of them, right? And you put all those pieces together and you have, I think the statistics is 3/4 of the people on welfare are illiterate, right? You have a society that will just continue to break down until we get educators in the building that are full of life and full of what I would call magic. So in my classroom, I try to be like Buddy the Elf. So the slide in front of you, if you're watching right now, is Buddy in his split, which I'm a yoga teacher, so I grabbed that one because I can still do that split. Not that wide, I think that's photoshopped. But then it's the one where he's like, I love everything pose. Like his fists are like, he's just, I love this analogy. So the analogy for my world is I try to be like Buddy the Elf. And ELF stands for easy, lucrative, and fun. Now, how do I avoid the opposite of that? The opposite of easy, lucrative, and fun is when you do things half-ass. So H is for hard, A is for annoying, L is for lame, and F is for frustrating. If it's hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, that's a lack of agency. It means this restaurant stinks and I don't want to be here. I'm not going to do this. This is going to be too hard to sit here. I'm going to be annoyed. I'm going to feel lame that I actually didn't speak up and say, this place stinks like fish and mold. And then I'm going to be frustrated. I'm not going to enjoy my dinner. Right? So in my world, I don't half-ass anything. Yeah. I am Buddy the Elf. So if you are on the slideshow, I'm going to click on lucrative and it's going to take you to thesaurus.com. And the words on the page, and there's going to be ads, so I'm going to go fast. The first 3 words that are the most similar are advantageous, cost-effective, and fruitful. So when you think lucrative, you might have thought money, which it is a profitable money-making word and has that connotation. But it can also mean sweet, gainful, worthwhile, fruitful. All those connotations matter, especially when you're thinking of this acronym of, all right, I have to be more like Buddy the Elf. And why do you have to be more like Buddy the Elf? Because teaching kids to read, write, speak, and think requires thinking. And not all brains think in the same way. But what the research shows is that students who have learning disabilities, processing disorders of any kind like dysgraphia or dyslexia, attention deficit with hyperactivity, 2 totally different kids, any of the 13 disabilities listed with the ADA, those kids' brains work differently. And what we know is that if something is interactive, visually interesting, friendly, clear, easy to read, that makes the student have less what I call stop signs. And stop signs are roadblocks to learning, right? So if you're looking at the slideshow, there's a 4-way stop, and in the center is the word thinking. And then at each of the 4 stops let's say it's car, reading, writing, speaking, listening. Those 4 things are reciprocal and cyclical, and the feedback loop, when one gets stronger, the other gets stronger, and when one gets weaker, the other one gets weaker, and they go round and round and round like that. So and what I always preached as the support facilitator for a high school that I worked for, or at any conference that I've spoken at on behalf of students with special needs, is what they require is also going to be what's most effective for all students. And they require you to break down lessons into smaller pieces. They require that you record them so that they can go back and or not even just live record, but have some type of recording. If I taught math, I would use Khan Academy in my classroom, right? I use Crash Course by one of the Green brothers. I use his videos in my college classes all the time. You don't have to create your own content, but every teacher is a teacher of reading. Every single teacher is a teacher of reading. Even if you teach health or PE or calculus or, there are strategies that we have classically researched strategies that work, and visually interesting presentations is just one of them, right? Last week, we talked about the word bolt. So the word of the week is not bolt, but that was last week's word. Bolt has 2 different meanings, and it's the same word. You can bolt, fasten something in place, or you can bolt out of the room. Like, if words like bolt can be complicated, imagine the brain that struggles to hear sounds correctly. Right? Those kids, anybody who struggles in any way, even if it's emotional struggles, the different meanings are almost, it becomes fuzzy to them. So we have left, the noun, the place, the people. You make a left. If you put your hands out in front of you, palms down, the L, your left hand is, right, it's the one that makes an L. That's how you teach a kid who can't figure it out. And then you have the left, the verb, the past participle of leave. Think of these 2. They're contronyms, okay? Antonyms are opposites and synonyms are the same, but a contronym is the same word that has 2 totally different meanings. You can remain at the airport, or you can depart from the airport. You left the airport, or you left your bag behind, or you departed and left your bag behind. You follow? So you can use them both in the same sentence. Then you have the adjective, a left hook. Mike Tyson. You'll stage left of the riverbank, left the building. The adjective describes the noun. This is the know-how slide, moving on from vocabulary words. Before you learn anything new, it's good to get a number of where you are. So this is the scale that I use. And a 1 is you don't know that you don't know. A 2 is that you know that you don't know. A 3 is that you know that you know. And a 4 is you don't know that you know. And the reason I bring this up is the struggling reader is a 1. They don't identify with being in the unknown. They don't know that they don't know. They're unconsciously incompetent, right? And the reason that we need to know this as educators and as parents and whatever your job is you can't shame and blame somebody for where they are. It is what it is. The number 2 is that you know that you don't know. So that's like, I'd give this Likert, this little scale, before I teach a new skill. At the beginning, I'll ask, where are you before I teach this skill? And then at the end, where are you now? And your hope is that you see some growth. So if you're interacting on the slideshow, you can drag your icon and put it, where are you in your reading comprehension right now? Do you realize that you don't know that you don't know? Or that are you like aware? Yeah, I know that I read the whole page and I don't know what I'm reading. Or are you like, no, I love to read, but you have, I'm interested in being here anyway. The consciously competent person is the one who wants to be in my book club, if that makes sense, because that person knows that they understand. And the thing about being in a classroom or a book club or something like that is community, right? And my classrooms and my content is all about you all, right? And so that's, thank you. Thank you for being here. Number 4, this is the virtuoso. I like to use artists or musicians or a surgeon is a virtuoso, you hope, right? Athletes, entertainers, any of that. When you get in your flow state and you don't even you're playing, you don't even know that you just go, that's a level 4. And teachers get in that state and they don't realize they're in that state. They expect their students already know what they are talking about, and they get unconsciously competent on their lessons. They assume too much. Understanding takes place. In fact, in my class, I'm a high school teacher. You come into my 10th grade or my 11th grade classes, and it assumes you already know how to write a great paragraph. There's no instruction in the lesson about how to do that. So I have my own instruction that I say, okay, well, let's work on this while we do this, right? So I keep saying this up. What could you do to up your skill level? And today, why does literacy matter is at the forefront of this conversation, because I hope you saw prior that it does matter with the numbers. But let's look at what it does for your brain. Brains that read store up background information. This allows us to make sense of new things in greater and more distinct ways. It's that principle where you talk about a color or a car or a band that you never heard of. You hear a song and then you hear it once, and then all of a sudden now you see it everywhere, right? That's because your background information, your schema is loading that information like a sponge. Number 2, reading proficiency increases your reasoning, your awareness of language, your understanding of yourself, and the skill of asking questions when you don't understand. Not all people will ask questions when they don't understand, and that takes skill. And your reading proficiency is only going to improve if you work with a skilled teacher, right? Number 3 is my heart and soul. Brains that read and talk about books with others show greater self-awareness and critical thinking, tend to engage in ideas more deeply, and are also more likely to sense themes in stories. I can't teach high school literature without accomplishing having the mindset that I have to get through in my instruction all of what I just said. I need them to have greater self-awareness, critical thinking skills, engage in ideas more deeply, sense the theme in a lesson. And I'm going to escape out of that and show you, and it's okay if it takes me a second to get there. I forgot to open it. When I teach Julius Caesar, how do you teach Julius Caesar without talking about betrayal, right? And I've been teaching Julius Caesar since the early 90s, and it's never been interesting to kids. It's hard to get them fired up about learning about it. And this slideshow that I give them fires them up because I teach them. It's a play about the dangers of political turmoil, and the conversation that we have about it is, do you know what happened on January 6th at the Capitol building? And then we have the theme on slide 2, betrayal is the only truth that sticks, Arthur Miller. This slide is what it feels like to have fake friends. So when I teach Julius Caesar, my first question is, do you have any fake friends? And I'm in Zoom, and if you could see the comments that come through, and I always say, like, watch your language. But yeah, this, I take students visually, aesthetically, emotionally through the themes using this interactive slideshow. So on this slide are all the themes of the unit, of my Shakespeare unit, but it's a word sort. In the words, listen to the words. And I realize I have power twice. Oh, isn't that funny? So some of the words on the word sort, and I'm teaching connotation in this lesson. So it's a positive and a negative, and there's a book, and they have to drag the words to whether they have a positive connotation or a negative connotation. So the words are power, fickle, honor, virtue, greed, loyalty, fame, faith, betrayal, might makes right, trust, power again, fate, respect, trust again. Girl, you need to work on that slide. Ethos, patriotism. Anyhow. This is my introduction into the play. And in that introduction, what am I doing? I'm doing what I said they need. I'm building up that background information before they even start reading. They know these are the themes of the unit. And then, I go into teaching them how to pull the most important quotes from the play to use to cite their sources. And I teach them, how do you decide what's important and what's not important, right? And I do that using Google Slides. And if you just look at my slideshows, I have hundreds of slideshows that get me, teach what I need to teach. And some of those aren't mine. But anyhow, so I took you out to show you that is how we make a better culture, is we have to read and talk about books with others, right? We have to, and we need it. It's not have to. What am I saying? Have to. We need to. It's a human requirement to connect with others. And what I was super successful for during COVID was making sure I took care of mine. So I had college students synchronously one class and asynchronously another. I had 120 high school students asynchronously, and then my 3 kids all home, all online, all on computers in their rooms. Take care of my mom, 74. And I ended up having to, and clients, let's not forget clients, right? I ended up having to hire people during COVID. So I ended up thriving during COVID, ironically. And that inspired me to do the podcast because I want so much of what I do to be free. And I want teachers and educators and just people to know, we have to step up our game nationwide and not teach to the test, but teach kids how to really think and read and write and speak. And the thing is in a classroom environment, especially today's kids, if you aren't competent in what you do, they sniff you out and then you end up with behavior problems. And if you aren't comfortable redirecting behavior in a classroom, you want a quiet class. And teachers, I tell teachers, my undergrad students, a quiet classroom does not mean learning is taking place. A quiet classroom means you're a great disciplinarian. Big difference. A learning environment is noisy, it's messy, it's a little chaotic, in fact. And it's exciting. And how exciting is it to get an assignment from your kindergarten or whatever teacher, and then you sit there quietly at your desk? That is just not okay anymore. That's where we started industrial model, but it is not okay with kids anymore. And why do they act out so much in classrooms nowadays? Because they have to. Right? They're like, I can't do this. You're not showing me in a way that I feel I can do this. So let's move on. Number 4 is of why literacy matters, because I go on my tangents. Among adults, it's associated with better health, greater job opportunities, and higher incomes. Better health because you can navigate the healthcare system and any illness you have, right? Greater job opportunities because you'll actually go and apply and make a resume and take the course that gets you certified. You'll do it, right? And then, of course, that all leads to your higher incomes. Number 5, people who can read and write will tend to have a wider range of options. My 19-year-old is in Kauai, Hawaii, working for the Nepali Pirates, which is like a boat company that at this time of year, it's a retired Navy raft that does like way more than they even need on these trips. It's like over-equipped boat. It goes fast and they go through caves. And if you don't know Nepali coast, look it up. Gorgeousness. She created that job out of thin air like 2 weeks ago, and she's already there. And now one of her friends is headed there with her. I don't know if I'm ever going to get her home. Now she has a girlfriend coming to hang out where she can go places with and feel even safer because this was her first solo trip. She would have never tackled these things if I didn't give her communication skills and competence and confidence her whole life. Her literacy gained her access to that wider range of options. Number 6, people with limited literacy don't see themselves as having a literacy problem. And that's from the National Council from Educational Standards. It's 1993 research, and honestly, nothing has changed there. What I want you to know most, if you are a Gen X or above, school is nothing like it is today. It's a fraction of what you were required to do. The new literacies that students have to overcome, besides locating and analyze information online, like the massive amounts that they have to navigate, wow. Identifying important questions in genre and point of view and structure and reader's response, like all the ways that you can get students thinking deeply about your subject and your content. It is all about the questions that you ask. And then, bouncing around here, if you're watching the slideshow, synthesizing info is the highest level of understanding, right? So, I mean, if we're talking Bloom's taxonomy, we have knowledge is the basic level. That's the who, what, where, when, why questions. Like, you can be a non-reader and still answer those questions, for the record. Then you have comprehension. That's that you understand it. Hold on. I haven't taught that class in a while. KC, application, analysis. I have an acronym for it. KCAC. Applying the knowledge is another level, and that analyzing is another level. Synthesis is a whole nother level, and then evaluation is another level. So we have never asked students to synthesize info the way that we have today. It is mind-blowing what they have to navigate to complete a research paper these days. Like when I did research papers, all I had was the card catalog and the high school library. If I was lucky, the community library. These kids have too much information, and they need to be taught more than ever how to navigate that dangerous and sometimes scary landscape. And then, of course, the last thing, and it's the light bulb of the slide, is they have to have a next level ability to communicate information. So think about what you had to communicate when you were in middle school or high school or even elementary school. My kids email their teachers. They talk on the phone with their teachers. On my school, we're required to talk to you once a month. It's like the law. They text their teachers. I use Google Voice to text my students, right? We use technologies where we didn't even know the education could be as simple and easy as COVID has shown the world it is. And what I want you to realize is the new literacies that kids are supposed to understand, it's a whole new world, a brand new world. I'm not going to sing. And last but not least, why do we teach kids literature in the first place? Why do we teach Julius Caesar in the 10th grade in my county since the day the county was established, probably? I don't know. It's always on my schedule, and I didn't get to choose. I would maybe choose a different Shakespearean play that didn't have, like, maybe a comedy, but we teach, oh my gosh, I mean, we do all the tragedies. But why? Why do I enjoy teaching Poe? Why do I enjoy all that of the fear and suspense genre? Well, reading literature teaches empathy by allowing the reader to see the world through the eyes of other people, right? You have a character from a book that you fell in love with some age where you saw the world the way that character saw the world. From Curious George to Jane Eyre, right? You can identify with those characters. And empathy is underrated. And empathy to me is the golden goose that all teachers need to identify with. Forget teachers. Everybody needs more empathy, including me. Number 2, reading literature trains your mind to be flexible because you see all those different points of view. It allows you to comprehend that other people have points of view and different ways of looking at the world. And that ability to see the life through the eyes of someone else can be very life-changing, right? If you've ever read a book that's been life-changing, you know that experience, right? Think of all the teachers, all the years that made us read all the sad dog books. Like, I'm a crier. I cried in class, y'all. Like, why? But why is because it teaches us empathy. It teaches us to feel. And it allows us, number 3, to communicate with language and ideas through time and space. Like, why is Romeo and Juliet so timeless? Because from friend to foe, right? 2 sides in ancient grudge, like mutiny, right? 2 sides. Politics. Shakespeare loved the political realm. He loved innuendo. He loved truth-telling through literature. Romeo and Juliet's just one example. Julius Caesar is the ultimate test of be careful who your friends are, because some of them will lie to you just to get what they want their way. Even the ones you think are your best friend, et tu brute. That rhymes, and I didn't really intend it to, but when I'm in flow, that's what happens in class, right, Professor? My classes would be like cheering me right now. I need to do these live. I'm so not as equipped to do them with no audience. But I'll do this anyway because it needs to be done. Number 3. I did number 3. This is the last slide. Did you find this session interesting, useful, and challenging? This is where at the end of class, I need to hear feedback. So if I did Maslow and Piaget or something, by the end of class, I expect them to know these theorists, not only like what they're known for, but how it applies to their classrooms. And if you were lost, this is a great place to say, hey, I need a little bit more help. And then though I collected this information for over a decade for the thousands of students who've gone through my programs and my classes, after a while, they ask the same questions. So I learned to know what is hard and what isn't hard. And if it's hard, I make new content to clear it up, right? I had kids who were saying hyperbole. They would call and I would say, tell me one of the poetic devices that you found most interesting. So it's like an open-ended question. They get to choose. They know the word choices. And I have kids over and over and go, hyperbole. To which I say, you mean hyperbole? Okay, what's a hyperbole, right? So I'm always correcting. And what did that make me do? It made me go create a video where they can hear me pronounce the word hyperbole. You follow? So I get inspired by my students. I get inspired by kids who don't understand because I am the one who says, you know what? I'll find a way to get you to understand, no matter what. That's my goal. I can teach anyone at any grade, any age, any brain to understand everything they read. So if they're feeling like they can't even get by, that's like the perfect student for my world. It's a small world. Even my high school day job, like some teachers hold like triple the students that I do, but I'm kind of like an old veteran. I'd probably be a donkey if I were a hooved animal. I'm gonna go as slow as fast as my students tell me to go. And over COVID, I had kids come in, and my principal from Broward Virtual School attests to this, that were suffering more than they've ever been suffering before. Kids with PANDAS, which is pediatric acute neurological syndrome, where they just had like a psychotic break and they're healing from it. And like that particular student got kicked out of 3 other teachers' classes. And then I got on the phone with the mom, and I actually just sent this, my welcome stuff, and she called me for the welcome portion of the class. And like I knew instantly that I would not give up on this student. And she said, I knew the second I saw your welcome message that you were this teacher for my student, for my son. And he finished my class. And he had, and I ask at the end, every student who's ever been in my class, and if I didn't ask you this, you just don't remember. At the end of class, at the end of the year, I want your feedback. And then I took all that feedback and created content for anyone who needs a little sunshine in their life. So thank you for listening. Welcome to my world. I look forward to next week, and fare thee